This episode is presented to you in the form of an audiobook. Introduction: How an Insignificant Ape Came to Rule the World. Sapiens shares the long and surprising tale of how Homo sapiens, which was once just an ordinary animal, became the main force that shapes our planet. Harari explains human history as the result of three big revolutions: the cognitive revolution, about 70,000 years ago, the agricultural revolution, around 12,000 years ago, and the scientific revolution, about 500 years ago. Each of these revolutions changed how humans thought, worked together, and organized their lives in a big way. The book starts by breaking down the comforting idea that humans have always been special. For most of their time on Earth, early humans were not very important in the ecosystem, living similarly to other animals. They collected plants, scavenged for food, and were hunted by stronger predators. What makes Harari's story unique is his belief that human dominance didn't come from being smarter or more moral, but from specific historical events. Harari places human history in a much larger context that includes physics, chemistry, and biology. From the Big Bang to the start of life, and from early human ancestors to modern humans, history is shown as a part of natural processes instead of a story focused only on humans. This viewpoint takes away the idea that humans are the center of everything and makes readers think again about what progress really means. An important idea introduced early on is that humans were never alone. For hundreds of thousands of years, different human species, like Neanderthals, Homo erectus, and Denisovans, lived together. Homo sapiens eventually became the only human species left, which raises tough questions about competition, extinction, and possible violence. Harari doesn't give easy moral answers, but points out how fragile and recent our uniqueness really is. The introduction is really important because it sets up Harari's main point. Big human cooperation isn't based on being strong or super smart, but on what people believe together. Myths, stories, and ideas that only exist in our minds are what really drive history. This idea helps us understand politics, religion, money, and today's institutions. Key idea number 1. The cognitive revolution gave humans the power of shared myths. About 70,000 years ago, Homo sapiens experienced the cognitive revolution, a major change that shaped human history. Before this time, sapiens looked like modern humans, but didn't act very impressively. They made basic tools and didn't have any clear advantages over other human species. But after the cognitive revolution, humans started to create new things quickly, move to different continents, and beat all their competitors. The key part of this revolution was a new type of language. While many animals can communicate, and even earlier humans could share simple information, sapiens created a language that was flexible, abstract, and imaginative. This let them not only talk about the world as it is, there is a lion near the river, but also about things that aren't real at all. The lion is our guardian spirit. Harari believes that this ability to discuss imaginary things, like gods, spirits, tribes, and shared identities, was the real reason for human success. These made-up ideas helped large groups of strangers work together well. Unlike chimpanzees, who can only work together in small groups where everyone knows each other, sapiens could bring together thousands or even millions around common stories. Language also made gossip possible, which was really important for evolution. By sharing information about who could be trusted and who couldn't, early humans built more stable and united social groups. This helped cooperation grow beyond just family ties and set the stage for complex societies. As a result, sapiens quickly outpaced other human species. They created long-distance trade, developed complex hunting techniques, made symbolic art, and formed early religious beliefs. Neanderthals, even with their strong bodies and big brains, couldn't create flexible, large-scale teamwork based on shared stories. Eventually, they vanished, leaving Homo sapiens as the only human species. The cognitive revolution is when history really starts, not because humans suddenly got smarter in a technical way, but because they figured out how to believe together. From this moment on, human fate would be influenced more by imagination than by biology. Key idea number 2. The agricultural revolution was history's biggest trap, not a clear advancement. About 12,000 years ago, people started to domesticate plants and animals, which is called the agricultural revolution. At first, this change, from hunting and gathering to farming, seems like a clear step forward. People made more food, their numbers increased, and they built permanent homes. But Harari questions this usual belief and boldly calls the agricultural revolution history's biggest fraud. For individual people, farming didn't make life better. Hunter-gatherers usually had more varied diets, better health, and more free time. In contrast, early farmers had to work longer hours doing hard, repetitive tasks. Their diets became less diverse, relying heavily on a few main crops like wheat or rice, which caused nutritional problems and made them more prone to famine. The true winners of the agricultural revolution were the plants and animals, not the humans. Wheat, rice, and domesticated animals spread all over the world in huge amounts, but only because humans changed their whole lives to serve these species. According to Harari, humans didn't domesticate wheat. Instead, wheat domesticated humans, pushing them into hard labor, permanent homes, and strict daily schedules. Farming also brought new social issues. Extra food allowed populations to grow, but it also led to inequality. Some people controlled land, grain storage, and resources, while others became dependent workers. Social hierarchies became stronger, leading to the rise of elites, kings, and bureaucracies. These inequalities were often supported by myths, religions, and later legal systems, which reinforced social divisions instead of helping to fix them. Permanent settlements came with extra costs. Having lots of people in one place made it easier for diseases to spread, especially those that came from animals we kept. Owning property caused fights, wars, and the need for organized violence. Unlike hunter-gatherers who could escape danger or lack of food, farmers were stuck with their land and crops, making them more at risk from natural disasters and attacks from others. Harari points out that evolution doesn't really care about making us happy. Natural selection favors those who can reproduce, not those who feel good. Farming helped more people survive and have kids, even if it meant that each person had a tougher and less happy life. Over time, humans found themselves stuck in a farming system they couldn't leave behind. The agricultural revolution changed human societies in big ways, but not always for the better. It put humanity on a path of growing populations, inequality, and changing the environment, leading to the rise of states, empires, and future revolutions, while quietly making life harder for the average person. Key idea number 3. Shared beliefs like money, empires, and religions unified humankind. After the agricultural revolution, human societies grew bigger, more complicated, and more connected. This created a big question. How can millions of people who don't know each other work together? Harari says the answer was in making universal imagined orders, shared beliefs that went beyond local tribes and traditions. The most important of these were money, empires, and universal religions. Money was the best and most adaptable way for large groups to cooperate. Unlike bartering, money made it easier for strangers to trade because it was based on trust, not personal connections. Whether it was gold coins, silver, or later paper money, money worked because people believed that others would accept it in exchange. Harari points out that money isn't a real thing, but a shared story, one of the most successful myths ever created. It allowed for global trade networks and linked faraway cultures that otherwise had little in common. Empires gave political unity on a scale never seen before. By taking over large areas, empires brought different groups of people under one government and legal system. While empires often used violence and exploitation, they also helped with cultural sharing, technology spread, and economic connections. Harari notes that most empires justified their power with universal ideas, like civilizing missions, divine rights, or natural hierarchies, rather than just force alone. Over time, empires didn't just control people, they changed who they were. The people who were conquered started using the languages, laws, and customs of the empires, which led to new cultures that lasted even after the empires fell. For example, the way Latin spread in the Roman Empire, or how Mandarin was used in Chinese empires, shows how political power created lasting cultural connections. Universal religions also helped by providing moral guidelines that everyone could follow, no matter their local customs. Unlike tribal religions that were linked to specific areas or families, religions like Buddhism, Christianity, and Islam offered universal truths and promised salvation or freedom for all. These belief systems helped large groups of people work together by promoting shared values, norms, and ethical standards across wide populations. Together, money, empires, and religions changed history from a bunch of separate local stories into one big, connected human story. Harari points out that this coming together wasn't necessarily good or bad, it was just powerful. It set the stage for global civilization, but also increased inequality, control, and cultural sameness. By the end of this journey, people were closely connected, long before we had modern globalization. This prepared the way for the next big change, the scientific revolution, which would change how humanity viewed knowledge, power, and the future. Key idea number 4. The scientific revolution changed humanity's power by admitting ignorance. About 500 years ago, people started the scientific revolution, which was a big change in how we understand the world and our role in it. Unlike earlier beliefs that thought they had all the answers, modern science began with a bold idea: we don't know everything. This acceptance of not knowing helped spark amazing discoveries and gave people more power. Before this, societies thought that important knowledge was already given to them by gods, holy books, or wise old leaders. Scholars in the Middle Ages mainly looked for wisdom by studying religious texts and old writings, not by doing experiments. The scientific revolution changed this by saying that true knowledge should come from careful observation, math, and experiments, even if it went against what people had always believed. This new way of thinking greatly increased what humans could do. Science wasn't just about being curious. It quickly became linked to political power and money-making. Empires paid scientists to help with navigation, weapons, medicine, and map-making. In return, these scientific breakthroughs allowed Europeans to explore, conquer, and control large areas of the world better than ever before. Harari points out how closely science, empires, and capitalism are connected. Capitalism gave the money and resources needed for long-term research, while scientific advancements helped the economy grow. Investors were willing to fund risky projects, like trips overseas, hoping for profits in the future, even when the results were uncertain. This back-and-forth relationship created a cycle that sped up innovation. The scientific revolution changed everyday life a lot. Improvements in medicine helped people live longer, while new industrial technologies changed how we work, travel, and communicate. People learned to use huge amounts of energy, change ecosystems, and even modify life through genetic engineering. For the first time ever, humans had powers that were once thought to belong only to gods. But Harari warns that just because science is advancing, it doesn't mean people will be happier. Even though humans became stronger together, it didn't always mean that individual happiness got better. New technologies brought new dangers, like harming the environment, creating nuclear weapons, and raising tough questions about biotechnology. Science can explain how things work, but it doesn't tell us what we should really want. By the end of the scientific revolution, humans had changed from a species just trying to survive into a powerful force that could change the planet and themselves. This leads to a big and scary question. With all this power, what will humans decide to become next? Key idea number 5. The Industrial Revolution reshaped society, but not necessarily human happiness. About 200 years ago, the Industrial Revolution changed human life faster and more deeply than any other event before it. New inventions allowed people to use huge amounts of energy, starting with steam engines and later using fossil fuels and electricity. This change greatly boosted productivity and wealth, but it also changed society in many ways. One of the biggest changes was how traditional communities and families were replaced by the modern state and market. For most of history, people depended on their extended families and local communities for safety, education, healthcare, and emotional support. Industrialization broke down these networks. Instead, governments and markets offered protection, jobs, and welfare, often more efficiently, but also in a more impersonal way. The nature of work itself changed a lot. Industrial jobs required strict discipline, being on time, and doing repetitive tasks. People were trained to act like parts of a machine, adjusting their bodies and minds to fit the schedules of factories and offices. Harari believes that modern education systems were created mainly to produce obedient, punctual, and standardized workers rather than happy individuals. On a material level, life definitely got better for many people. Industrial societies created a lot of abundance, reduced famine, increased life expectancy, and improved healthcare. However, Harari wonders if these improvements really made people happier. Psychological studies show that happiness is more about expectations than actual conditions. As living standards go up, so do expectations, which often means that people's feelings of well-being stay the same. Additionally, industrial growth came with huge environmental and ethical costs. Mass production caused harm to the environment, disrupted the climate, and led to the widespread exploitation of animals. Even though domesticated animals are more numerous, they often suffer greatly in industrial farming systems, raising tough questions about the moral cost of human success. Harari also points out a contradiction. Even with more freedom and comfort than ever before, people today feel a lot of anxiety, loneliness, and unhappiness. Old sources of meaning, like religion, community, and shared stories, are becoming weaker, while consumer culture fails to offer real satisfaction. The Industrial Revolution fixed many material issues, but left the bigger questions about meaning and happiness unanswered. By the end of this revolution, Homo sapiens had gained incredible power, but was more unsure about its goals. This conflict leads to the book's final thoughts. If humans can change life itself, what should they truly desire? And who gets to make that choice? Key idea number 6. Homo sapiens may be replaced by a new kind of being. In the last section of Sapiens, Harari shifts his focus from the past to the future and makes a bold statement. Homo sapiens might not be the final chapter in human history. Just like previous human species vanished, modern humans could soon be changed, or even replaced, by beings with completely different skills. With the progress in biotechnology, genetic engineering, artificial intelligence, and cybernetics, humans now have amazing power to redesign life. For the first time, evolution is not just about natural selection anymore. It's about smart design. People are starting to change genes, live longer, boost their brain power, and even mix living things with machines. Harari points out 3 main paths this change could take. First, humans might go for biological upgrades, using gene editing and medical treatments to make people smarter, stronger, or to help them live longer. Second, humans could become cyborgs, adding technology directly into their bodies and minds. Third, humans might create non-organic intelligence, like AI systems that are smarter than humans. These changes challenge what we usually think of as human. Humanism, the idea that human feelings, experiences, and choices are the most important sources of meaning, has influenced modern politics, ethics, and culture. But if algorithms can make better choices than people, or if we can create or copy consciousness, humanism might lose its power, just like earlier belief systems did. Harari also brings up serious ethical issues. Upgrading technology is probably going to be really costly, which might create a group of superhumans with special abilities and a big number of regular humans without those upgrades. This could lead to the worst inequality ever seen, not just in money or politics, but also in biology. For the first time, this inequality might not be fixable. Importantly, Harari points out that having power doesn't mean you have wisdom. People have gotten a lot of technological skills, but that hasn't made us any happier or clearer about what's right and wrong. We are gaining godlike power, but we're still confused about what we want to achieve. The real problem isn't that we're being evil, but that we're just wandering around without a purpose, changing life without understanding the reasons behind it. The book finishes with a big question instead of a clear answer. If Homo sapiens can now influence the future of life itself, what do we actually want to become? And who gets to make that choice? Harari believes that history hasn't taught us how to answer these questions, but we can't just ignore them anymore. Final summary: the story of how humans became gods without knowing why. Sapiens tells the story of how humans went from being just a small ape to the most powerful species on Earth by showing how we learned to work together in big groups. This skill didn't just come from being strong or smart, but from our ability to create and believe in shared stories. The cognitive revolution gave Homo sapiens the ability to use language to make up myths, religions, and imagined worlds, which helped us cooperate with people we didn't know. The agricultural revolution made the population grow and gave more power, but it often made individual lives harder, forcing people into tough work, social hierarchies, and inequality. Through money, empires, and worldwide religions, humans slowly came together into one big global system. Then, the scientific revolution increased our power by accepting that we don't know everything and by asking questions in a systematic way, connecting knowledge with empires and capitalism. The Industrial Revolution changed societies and living conditions, but it didn't solve the problem of human happiness and caused a lot of environmental and ethical issues. Now, humanity is at a crucial point. With biotechnology and artificial intelligence, we might soon be able to redesign life itself. Harari's main warning is clear: we have gained powers like gods, but we still don't really know what we want.